Now, medical science around your time was already having major advances in the world of genetics, already touching on things like gene-based therapies and the development of unique pharmaceuticals tailored to an individual's genetics. But the use of retrovirals and other methods was not always effective, and honestly, was usually quite time-consuming and labor-intensive. That changed though with the creation of the neomaterial silk on the hot Islamic world of Iraq. This biosynthetic neomaterial was a game changer. Although it had a few metals in it, its primary substrate was a complex organic polymer. This polymer weaved its way into a host body, creating a non-disruptive network of silken threads that could interact with individual cells down to a genetic level, while also capable of being controlled and monitored remotely, allowing a person to basically alter a person's DNA in real time. As you can guess, this led to quite a few changes in society. Originally, its uses were minor, mainly used for gene therapy, but as more advanced versions of silk began to be produced, its capabilities allowed for far greater changes to the human body. With silk, you could regrow nerves or even whole organs inside of a person's body. Specific immune responses could be programmed, allowing for instant adaptation to new pathogens, and other things that would be considered a miracle only a few decades before. Eventually, though, silk began to be used beyond the medical field. For example, I'm sure you've heard of terraforming, changing a planet to suit humanity's needs. There is some of that whenever a nation decides to colonize a world, but not as much as you think. Usually, colonists choose to modify a world just enough to make the world habitable. There are two main reasons for this. The first is that extensive terraforming to make a world Earth-like can take generations. And well, most colonists don't have time for that. Secondly, doing so would most likely wipe out a vast majority of the alien life on the planet, and most people don't desire to wipe out what makes their world unique, so most people prefer to adapt to the environment instead of having the environment adapt to them. Usually that means mundane forms of adaptation, like a extra thick coat on colder worlds, but a few choose to genetically change themselves to better suit the worlds they're on. For example, the capital world of Hakislam, Barak, was terraformed, but some parts of the planet remained extremely dry, arid, and generally hostile. So a large part of the population has bioenhancers that allow them to better retain and manage water, while making their skin more resistant to damaging UV radiation. Silk is also used in the military, allowing soldiers to receive bioenhancers that improve strength, agility, hand-eye coordination, lung capacity, endurance. The list goes on. Nations could essentially adapt their soldiers to whatever role they may have on the battlefield. Now, like many scientific discoveries, silk moved from the practical to the fashionable. Regular people soon began using silk for body mods to change things like eye color, height, and skin tone. Cosmetic applications were popularized like targeted fat flushing and 24-hour face morphs. Even grafting parts of alien fauna to a human body has become popular in some circles. In the same way that people use clothes to adhere to a seasonal beauty fad, soon people use genetic alterations to do the same. Now, as you can guess, silk, like all tech, can be used for nefarious purposes. The most obvious uses, of course, being bioweapons. But there are also silk-derived drugs like nitrocaine, which makes the drugs in your time look like sugar in comparison. To combat all the dangers of silk, O12 created several bureaus to monitor all biomedical sciences across human space. Bureau Agni, which monitors the use of neuromaterials, Bureau Athena, which ensures the protection of human rights, and Bureau Lakshmi, which provides bioscience and medical expertise. These three organizations work together to ensure that not only is genetic manipulation not abused, but also make sure it doesn't get out of hand. Now, as big as all these changes were, the biggest change to human society introduced by silk was immortality. Actually, I should probably backtrack a bit. Some other things need a bit of an explanation. So remember how I said before that Aleph can create limited self-aware AIs. Some of those that she creates are digital helpers that help her manage the Maya network. But there are times she needs some work done in the physical world, work that she can't trust in the hands of regular people. For that sort of work, she derives the use of L-hosts, a clone-like biosynthetic body, rapidly grown onto an artificial skeletal structure using overlapping silk networks. Once the L-host is formed, the AI is placed inside of it, and Aleph gets a physical agent in a human sphere. Actually, physical self-aware AIs aren't only used by Aleph. As a gift, I think, Aleph gave Pan-Oceana Ella-host AI based on Joan of Arc. Originally, I think Joan was used by the government as some form of propaganda, but Aleph never does anything by halves. When she gave them Joan of Arc, she gave them Joan of Arc. it became obvious this El-host had a keen military mind, and a faith in God that put most priests to shame. After John commanded quite a few successful military operations for the church, soon other nations were keen on having their own El-hosts based on historical or even fictional people. I'm pretty sure Eugen has at least one or two El-hosts based on people from the Three Kingdoms era. Now with El-hosts explained, next up is Cube, a quantronic implant that uses Silk's ability to track synapse interfaces to record perfect digital images of the brain. Not only can it help you recover your memories and motor functions when you suffer from a brain injury, but when you eventually die, that cube can then be placed in an El-host, where you can be resurrected in a new body. As you can guess, once people figured out that functional immortality was possible, the cost of Silk skyrocketed, and soon only the richest of the rich could afford it, which of course caused a bit of social unrest that could have destabilized every nation on every world. Fortunately, O12 intervened before a crisis point could be reached, and passed laws regulating access to resurrections, requiring anyone requesting a resurrection to be authorized through official organizations appointed by their national governments. Nowadays, resurrection licenses are primarily obtained through the national bureaus, the party in Eugene, the church in Pan-Oceania, and so on. Licenses that are earned through merit, or on some rare occasions even lotteries. Unlicensed deceased are stored in cube banks, awaiting their turn in the almost impossibly long licensure queues. As harsh as that sounds, it does encourage people to have a much more active role in their society while they're alive. Of course, if you're particularly wealthy, and don't feel like waiting like everyone else, you can seek reincarnation through the black markets. Of course, attempting resurrection through a illicit dealer instead of a regulated government has its own set of possible issues, but to many, it's worth the risk. So with all the possible uses of Silk, you're probably assuming that every single person in the human sphere has some form of Silk-derived enhancement. That's not quite true. Most people, if they need to replace or enhance a part of their body, tend to choose a cybernetic alternative instead. The main reason for this is that Silk is expensive. Its expense is due to two things. The first is that Silk isn't that easy to produce. Its creation is a long and exhaustive process that requires a unique catalyzing agent. This leads on to the second reason. Haq Islam's tight hold on its production. Only they know how Silk is produced. Not that it hasn't stopped other nations and hypercorporations from trying to get that secret. You see, Haq Islam makes it their national priority to preserve their monopoly on Silk. And honestly, you can't blame them. Smaller in population and military than Eugene and Pan-Oceania, they need any edge they can to ensure they have the political clout to push galactic policies in their favor. And when you have the literal key to immortality in your hands, that's a pretty big edge. To protect their secrets, Haq Islam created the Silk Route. It's a path through human space, where carefully regulated trade companies transport Silk to individual buyers, using courier ships guarded by the Haq Islamite Armada. No major power has actively tried to attack the Armada for fear of losing access to Silk, but I'm sure there is a huge game of spycraft happening in the shadows, as Haq Islamic counter-espionage teams face off against who knows how many foreign agents trying to uncover their nation's secrets. Well, that's enough info about Silk, I think. With that out of the way, let's go back to talking about history, specifically the rise of another nation in human space, the Nomads.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this 5th video on the world of Infinity. If you like it, please like, subscribe, comment, press the little bell so the YouTube gods know I exist, and hopefully more people watch this video and get interested in this high-tech universe. If you have the cash and, it's a burning hole in your pocket and you're inclined, please also consider sending a little money away to my Patreon or my Ko-fi account. The extra money gives you a chance to work on these stories that I love. Thanks for listening/watching, and see you next time.